Hello and welcome back. I'm Evenlease, and this is the very first episode of my new series, Talking Even More. Today, we're diving into the new medical changes, what's good, what's not so good, and where I think things are headed. I'll be sharing my honest thoughts, breaking down how these updates affect gameplay and what it might mean for us going forward. And for the first time, I'll be answering some hand-picked questions from my YouTube and Patreon members. This is a part of a brand new perk for supporting the channel. If you're a member, you get the chance to ask me questions directly, and I'll cover them here in this series. So let's get to it. Now let's talk about the new medical gameplay changes, specifically how medical beds on ships and ground vehicles work. First off, it's important to note that stations and landing zones with hospitals and clinics are not affected by these updates. Those stay the same for now. The changes are focused entirely on ship and vehicle medical beds. So here's how it works. Respawn and injury healing, like tier injuries, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, now consume med gel on that specific medical bed, which then has to be refilled. Basic use like topping off your health, your food, or liquids doesn't use med gel. Each canister of med gel costs 100,000 aUEC and contains 200 med gel. Beds have different storage limits depending on their tier. Tier 3 beds can hold 200 med gel, which equals 2 respawns, 100 med gel per respawn. Tier 2 beds can hold 400 med gel, good for 4 respawns, and Tier 1 beds can hold 600 med gel, enough for 6 respawns. Healing injuries also drains med gel, but at smaller amounts. So a tier 3 injury is 5 med gel. A tier 2 injury is 10 med gel, and a tier 1 injury is 20 med gel. The big issue right now is how the system handles partial med gel reserves. For example, if your bed only has 100 med gel left and you use it to heal a tier injury, it'll deduct the correct amount, but then the leftover med gel becomes unusable. It's effectively wasted unless you bring that med gel back over 100, because if it's at 95 or 80, you'll only be able to heal tier injuries from that point on. You won't be able to spawn on that bed. My personal suggestion, and something I hope CIG considers, is that the bed should instead use whatever med gel remains and then let you respawn at a percentage base level. So if you've got 70 med gel left, you'd spawn at 70% health, using up everything in the tank. That way, nothing goes to waste. And it also adds a tactical layer of deciding whether to push forward at partial strength or fall back. Alright, so now that we know how med gel works, let's go over how you actually refill it. It's pretty simple actually. On the Apollo, you'll see these black square slots on the wall. That's where you insert the med gel canisters once the bed is below its cap. On most other medical beds, you'll find the refill point on the side of the bed itself, but the slot looks exactly the same as the Apollo's. Just pop the canister in and you're good to go. Now let's talk about which ships have which tier beds, because patch 4.3.1 didn't just change how med gel works, it also changed what tier of bed is inside certain ships. Here's the breakdown. Tier 3 beds, you have the Nursa, the C8R Pisces, the Drake Cutlass Red, the Apollo Module, and shocker, the Idris. They dropped all the Tier 2 beds down to Tier 3. And here's a little bit why. The Tier 2 beds, you have the Apollo Module, you have the Anvil Terrapin Medic, you have the Carrack, the Polaris, the 890 Jump, and yes, the Idris again. That's right, they actually removed the Idris Tier 1 bed and downgraded it to a Tier 2. That's in the PTU right now, which is about to go live, so expect that not to change. And finally, for Tier 1 beds, you only get the Apollo module, and that's it. No big cap ship option anymore. And if that wasn't enough, they also updated the respawn distances, which makes a huge difference in how these beds are used. Tier 3, you have 50 kilometers, just enough to get a little distance on a moon. Tier 2, 8,000 kilometers, basically anywhere on a planet or moon, more or less. And Tier 1, 750 million kilometers. Yep, that's across the entire system and then some. You can literally respawn on this other side of Stanton. Insane. So, what do I actually think about all this? Honestly, yes, I do think it's a good idea and a step in the right direction. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to do much for the medical career right now. Typically, when you go out to, resurrect somebody, you are using a medical pen or a medical gun, and that's pretty much as simple as it is. You go out there, you res them, and you go on with your business. But also, when you die in Star Citizen, there's currently no real risk. You don't lose your armor or weapons, only the gear in your backpack. And because of that, most of us just hit backspace instead of wasting 30 minutes waiting for a medic. And let's be real, usually no one comes out anyway, since flying a medical ship into a rescue can be a trap where the downed player ambushes and kills the medic. The fastest option is simply backspace, respawn, and go grab the stuff in your backpack again. So how could this be fixed? A couple ways. Remove the lock on armor and weapons. If death meant you actually risked losing your loadout, it would make calling a medic worthwhile and give the career some weight. Or you can add a timer system. For example, a 10-minute lockout on your gear when you die. You respawn without your weapons and armor, but you have 10 minutes to return to your body and reclaim it. After that, the lock expires and other players can loot it. Without some kind of real risk factor, medical gameplay will remain rare outside of roleplay scenarios. But let's take a step back. Does this new med gel system and respawn gameplay matter in the current game at all? The answer is yes, but only slightly. What it really does is curb the one-man army respawn you'd see with ground nurses or aerial units constantly popping players back in for free, no risk, no consequence. And the biggest impact is going to be on organizations. A lot of emergent gameplay comes from players creating their own battles. Team deathmatches, bunker raids, even capture the flag style events, and medical ships have often been at the center of those. Now, with med gel costing what it does, those respawns come at a hefty price. And until orgs shift towards setting spawns at stations, this is going to sting. And speaking of stations, we all know what happens when too many people try to spawn at them. Hangar queues. They're already overflooded, and this is only going to make that worse. We need more hangars, CIG, please. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions from my Patreon supporters, thank you so much, who put their questions in my supporter chat on the Discord. So let's go ahead and start with the first one from Shadow Toiger. Given the current state of the game, do you think these changes will affect the number of people actively playing? Honestly, I don't see why it would, because this doesn't affect the day-to-day, using a med pen or using a med gun to revive somebody at all. There is no change to that medical gameplay. If anything, this shows that CIG is starting to focus on the medical gameplay, and they're probably heading towards tier 1 of the gear system, which would add the risk and then, buff the medical gameplay up again. So honestly, I would think not. I don't think that's going to change the number of people actively playing. It just might change the number of people actively flying a medical ship at the current time. The next question from Captain Sylv. Do you think these updates support more practical core gameplay around medical or roleplay fluff? And honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. On the surface, yes, these updates definitely add some weight to the medical system by putting a real cost on respawns. That's a step toward more practical core gameplay because it forces players and orgs to think about where they're spawning and how much it's costing them. But at the same time, in the current state of the game, it leans more towards roleplay fluff. The reason is simple. There's no real penalty to death. If you don't lose your armor and guns, most players are just going to backspace and run back out. That bypasses the whole point, the needing of a medic, no matter how expensive med gel is. So while I do think this system's heading in the right direction for core gameplay, it's not quite there yet. Until there's real risk tied to death, like losing gear or needing a medic to recover you, medical gameplay won't reach its full potential. Right now, it's more of a building block for the future than a core gameplay loop. The next question is from Bezelbuth. What are your thoughts on all med beds being able to respawn even with the med gel being added? Do you think that tier 3 and maybe 2 shouldn't do that in order to enforce the care management gameplay? I think that's a fair concern. Right now, all med beds being able to respawn even with med gel requirement kind of waters down the tier system. If a tier 3 bed in a Cutlass Red or Pisces can do the same core thing as a tier 1 Apollo bed just with fewer charges, then it blurs the line between emergency medical support and dedicated hospital ship. In my opinion, tier 3 beds should really be about stabilization and basic treatment, not true respawn points. Maybe tier 2 could go either way, okay, but I'd argue they should be limited too. That would make tier 1 beds feel unique and valuable, enforcing the idea that the best care requires the best equipment, which actually might be a route they plan on going someday, just not there yet. The last question is, do you think this is going to cause people to be against letting people set their spawns? There's a pretty good chance of that, because when you're running your capital ship and then you have 5 or 6 people setting their spawns on your ship, I really hope they come with their wallet, because they're going to be paying you to spawn on your boat. At least they should be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Everybody, you all are truly amazing. And of course, I will see you all in the next one.